Okay, so I was shooting last night. I didn't realize my battery had died a few times in making this final installment. So my battery dies, which was fine. I have my backup batteries. So I exchange the batteries when they die, continue lecturing. But I didn't realize that I completely filled the flip to capacity. I didn't realize it was 2.5 hours worth of lecture that I had done last night. I was at the university for a while, obviously in the office filming, but then I went to the library and did some more research for something else that I have to do, the next series that I'm doing. And then I realized, wow, I completely lost track of time. So I was going to finish it up at home, left the office, erased the board, and then, then I realized, no, I have to do this last bit justice. So I decided to come back and finish up the series properly. And we're talking about the last page of The Occult. So I want to make sure I finish it. I started, I thought I would be finished on Wednesday, but here it is Thursday, and I'm still trying to finish this series. So I'm going to redraw the information on the last page and present it as though I hadn't presented it. This might be a little bit redundant, but there's nothing I could do. I completely filled the flip to capacity. I didn't think it was that long. I sort of got lost in the lecture, but I didn't think it was that long that I was talking. So let's finish this. Oh man, I hope this works. Let's finish this lecture. Okay, so we're at the very end. This is theories, obviously, and this is section 8, and we're talking about this is the final page. Okay, so let me draw the image again. I think the first time I drew it, it was blue. It's black now. And then we'll split, right? The left and the right. Okay, so left, right, the one. Okay. So again, I decided to come back. I was going to take a day off before I started my next video series, which has absolutely nothing to do with really theories or especially the occult. But I was like, no, I need to go back to the office and finish the series properly. All right, so left, right, the one, and the determinations, the distinctions that we're going to make. Remember, we said sex, then we said death, and then we said attachment. And then we're talking about the people here. Okay, so and a little bit of this might be a repeat. It's probably I'm just going to tack this on to the end of whatever the last video was that I have on my computer in my video editing software. Again, just to be clear, it is not being suggested. I'm not suggesting that in a discourse on the occult that these two halves, the left path and the right path, the right-hand path and the left-hand path, represent the totality of occultist views, right? There are occultists who are right-hand path occultists that aren't going to be so willing to go the extreme aestheticism and relinquish all connections as is discussed here. What I'm presenting is a pole, right? So we have the right-hand path, RHP extreme. Then we have the LHP extreme, and then we have gradations of all variations leading up to those poles. What I'm presenting on is not the gradation. What I'm presenting on is the extremes, so that you have a sense of what the extremes are and how this discourse on RHP, LHP, with respect to occultist practice, functions, right? The best way to do that, undeniably, is to talk about the extremes, and then you can position, if you're RHP or if you're LHP, where you are with respect to your particular practice. And again, this lecture is assuming, of course, that you are occultist, right? That it's surrounding the occult. There are aspects in which you can talk about RHP and LHP sort of independent to occult, but I'm not going to get into that because this is a video lecture on the occult. Okay, so what ends up happening, and again, I probably already said this in the last bit, and this might be a bit redundant. What ends up happening, and I'll go through this because I know I did this part, is the one is considered as the totality, right? The supreme entity, the supreme deity, whatever that thing might be, or the supreme deities, the supreme mind. In the Aristotelian sense, we saw that the uncaused cause is for the occultist mind, right? It has to be the absolute potential of mind manifesting, so that we live in a mind then matter world rather than a matter then mind world. For the left-hand path followers, we see that sex is the condition in which death arises, and I talked about that, right? Sexuality is inherently the condition in which death is entered into the cosmos, if you will, right? You can think, and I spoke about this yesterday, the distinction between sexual and asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction creates new beings, but it also imbues those beings with death. Asexual reproduction, the original entity is, in a sense, immortalized in itself because it reproduces itself, right? Asexual reproduction is a division of the self, right? So insofar as we've transitioned in our evolutionary process from asexual to sexual reproduction, we've lost that last glimpse of, or that last possibility for immortality, biological immortality, and we embrace death. Right? Death becomes inherent within sex. This idea of death being inherent was justified by, and I said this yesterday as well, was justified by Martin Heidegger's conception of a being towards death. Death is not something that comes out as an external force to attack you. Death is something inherent that inheres within each of us, and we are perpetually moving towards the actualization of that death. Both the LHP and RHP, and you don't have to be an occultist to believe that, right? I'm not saying that Martin Heidegger was an occultist. You could be just a philosopher. I believe that we are beings towards death, right? That's just, for me, that's just fact. Then we go from death to attachment, and then the example, I probably should use a different color. Then we go from death to attachment, and the example that I used was Anakin's attachment to Princess Amidala in the Star Wars trilogy, and how his refusal to recognize and acknowledge the inherent death within Padme led to him embracing the most extreme pole of LHP, right? He became the leader of the dark side, really, in a sense, right? And what ends up happening is we see that this becomes an imposition on the individual. The individual lives in a world where the attachment and his or her existence within this world is one in which death and sex have embodied his or her existence, right? I am that which will eventually die. The way that the LHP in the most extreme pole attain enlightenment, right, arrive at liberation. Remember, we said RHP is Kavalia, and I read to you Aleister Crowley's discourse on, eating feces, eating defecation, in order to attain the enlightenment of the one. Because, in a sense, the RHP and the LHP are going to recognize that that supreme entity is both, not necessarily good and evil, but it's the war god, and it's the god of life, right? It's the god of death and the god of birth, right? There is a duality in the oneness of this being. And what happens is that the respective members of the occultist community separate themselves and try and attain liberation and enlightenment through different means, but all, remember, as I said before, recognizing all of these principles are shared. So what ends up happening is that the LHP occultist practitioner then embraces attachments, right? I'm going to embrace the attachments because it's in the attachments to the world, it's in my connection to people, it's in my existence and my presence with other objects and other people that I come to recognize the true nature of my existence and my attempt to attain liberation.